Thank you. It has been my honor to serve as the 69th President of the Congress of Neurological Surgeons. I was humbled and excited by this opportunity to make a difference. Today, I'm here to speak with you about being a neurosurgeon, not about the reasons why you and I chose to practice medicine, but how we can and should practice, educate, and influence with reason. How, as active voices for science and truth, we can cultivate an age of reason for neurosurgery and medicine as a whole. First, I must acknowledge those who have inspired me and made a difference for our profession and for the CNS. I was fortunate to go to medical school at the University of Arizona, which at the time didn't have a training program, but the faculty encouraged me to pursue neurosurgery. I trained at the University of Utah first under the late Peter Halbrin and then Bill Caldwell. I was fortunate to spend 2 years in the laboratory with Dan Fultz, whom I credit with launching my scientific career. I also trained with an amazing group of individuals who have gone on to illustrious careers with stellar reputations. For the last 15 years, it has been my honor to work at one of the finest institutions in the world, the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, and with these accomplished colleagues. I owe our honored guest Ray Sawaya a great debt for inviting me to be one of his faculty. I want to acknowledge Dan Yosher, who gave me the awesome responsibility, with the support of the excellent Baylor faculty, of directing the Baylor College of Medicine neurosurgery program. This year, it was my pleasure to represent the CNS at the Brazilian Neurosurgical Society, the Neurological Society of India, and the Japanese Congress of Neurological Surgery. The Japanese CNS has been an excellent partner this year. The current executive committee of the CNS represents 16 different institutions and is as diverse as ever. I have been lucky to serve with some of the most intelligent and motivated people in our specialty. I would like to thank the most recent WNS presidents, Shelley Timmons and Chris Shaffrey, for their ongoing commitment to our common purpose this past year. The camaraderie between the major neurosurgical organizations is at an all-time high, and the specialty is well represented at all important levels. The Washington Committee, led by Ann Stroink and Katie Arrico, represents the best of collaboration between the WNS and CNS and organized neurosurgery. The section chairs are working in the best interests of the respective subspecialty, which is proving to be beneficial for every neurosurgeon. Our journals remain strong due to the editor-in-chief, Dr. Nelson Oyasiku, and managing editor, Brandon Feeder, and the journal office, and also thanks to our section editors and reviewers. Thank you for making our journals among the most well-regarded of all surgical journals. The CNS office, under the leadership of Regina Shupak, has been remarkable. The success of the CNS is due to their extraordinary efforts. This meeting has been put together by Alex Kalesi, Nader Paradian, and Brian Nahead, with the help of Deanne Starr and April Martin from the CNS. This entire team has made it possible for us to come together as surgeons and colleagues, which is an important part of our personal and professional development. All of these people and experiences have helped me become someone who is able to care for patients who have entrusted their care to me during the most difficult times in their lives. I know firsthand how terrifying a diagnosis of cancer can be for the patient and their loved ones. I'm indebted to them most of all. These words, written by Thomas Paine in the pamphlet Common Sense, which spurred the United States to fight for its independence, underscore the theme of this year's meeting. Paine would go on to pen The Age of Reason and the Rights of Man, which were some of the first examples of free rational inquiry and critical thinking in the United States. Today, we're living in a time of major upheaval with respect to trust in institutions, acceptance of fact, and recognition of expertise. 24-hour news cycles, constant reminders to engage in social media, and a culture that rewards fame for fame's sake have all contributed to our current state of mistaking skepticism and critical thinking with denialism. Equal time is given to spurious viewpoints, which are touted as equivalent to verifiable truths. To be clear, skepticism is no vice. Suspicion of dogma is not by itself a crime. But what has happened worldwide over the past several years has eroded trust in institutions, and neurosurgery is no exception. Much of the loss of trust in the rigor of scientific inquiry can be traced to the deluge of information we are exposed to. The amount of information being generated across the globe is staggering. Some 500 million tweets are sent daily for a total of 200 billion tweets per year. By the year 2020, the entire digital universe is expected to reach 44 zettabytes. That's a 1 followed by 21 zeros. That's 40 times more bytes than there are stars in the observable universe. The ability to distinguish reputable information from misinformation is a nearly impossible task when information comes at us so quickly. One can appreciate how easily information can be manipulated. Simple things like reviews on websites can no longer be trusted. In fact, research recently published in the journal Science has shown that on social media, false stories spread 70% faster than true ones. And this phenomenon is not due to bots, but rather posts by humans. Conspiracies can be easily concocted by unsubstantiated claims. Some of these are not new and some are ridiculous. Correlation is often confused with causation. Myth is reported as fact. Celebrity can now overcome a need for proof. Diagnosing disease from just a drop of blood seems extraordinary. And as Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The deluge of scientific misinformation parallels the increase in digital content. Medical journals, once a respected repository of rigorous scientific inquiry, have become the source of significant misinformation and dubious peer review. Insight's journal citation reports now indexes more than 12,500 journals. Not all journals are equal. Even a journal with a good reputation can sometimes get it wrong. Predatory journals, a term coined only a decade ago, are now commonplace and difficult to differentiate from well-respected titles. These journals often charge a significant article processing fee, lack rigorous, if any, peer review, and take advantage of the publish or perish paranoia that pervades academic medicine. One might think that the accessibility of data would allow individuals to make rational choices about the information that they consume. However, there's virtually no regulation of this information. Our patients have more access than ever to the medical literature, but the democratization of information may have actually undermined scientific trust and understanding. This audience, those of us here in the room and our colleagues in neurosurgery and in medicine, can differentiate high-quality journals from low-quality ones, but the public probably cannot tell the difference. Patients now arrive to our clinics armed with misinformation in the form of alternative therapies, including potentially harmful supplements or ineffective treatments. It turns out that black tea probably won't cure skin cancer. This is all creating a situation we never would have imagined 20 years ago, before the rise of the internet. And it is a sensitive issue at a time when we are encouraged, and appropriately so, to engage more with our patients and to listen and involve them. This admirable goal has gone awry. Now our first burden is to teach them how to trust the experts, trust us again. We must be prepared to help our patients differentiate the truth from hype, to reassure them that the treatments we use are based on the best available medical evidence, and why evidence is essential. Payne wrote that we are entitled to our own opinions no matter how different yours may be from mine, but we should all retain the right to change it, and we should if persuaded by solid evidence. As physicians, we are not immune to the pitfall of holding rigidly to our biases. As science changes our practices, we are often slow to adapt. Physicians in general continue to practice medicine that is contrary to the evidence. Each year, JAMA publishes an update on medical overuse. How many times do you see gabapentin and its derivatives prescribed for sciatica? How about those $2 million robots your hospital is buying for kidney surgery? It turns out the evidence for their efficacy is very thin. Although neurosurgery is not immune to these hazards, to our credit, we have taken on trials of procedures that have eventually narrowed their scope of use. When a treatment shows promise, we've done the studies to verify their worth. But there may always be gray areas, particularly when it comes to certain procedures. Has our judgment been clouded on occasion by economic incentives? Perhaps, but we also get some things right, including adopting technology, knowing that the benefit will be there for our patients. Above all, when the challenge is adopting new ways of helping patients, it is incumbent on us to perform the appropriate studies when results look promising. No one else can validate or reject. That is a critical part of our responsibility as surgeons. An example from the neuro-oncology world is the EGFR variant 3 vaccine for the treatment of glioblastoma. Compared to historical controls, the vaccine showed tremendous promise, but in randomized controlled trials, it did not hold up. Neither did bevacizumab, which also showed promise in phase 2 trials, but failed in phase 3. What if we hadn't conducted these important randomized trials? How many patients would have been exposed to harmful and useless treatments? Without firm evidence for their use, procedures and treatments can be sold and promoted to an unsuspecting public who can be swindled or worse, harmed. When this happens, even procedures that may benefit our patients can get caught up in the fray. We need only look to the lay press to see how our profession can be sullied in ways that may seem unfair to us. The useless surgery referred to in this article in the New York Times is lumbar fusion for back pain and references a review article that doesn't at all come to the conclusion suggested, but rather recommends better studies be performed. This is one way that proven procedures get conflated with ineffective ones. Poorly investigated procedures and technology can harm our entire profession. What do we do when this misinformation reaches our patients, and they believe it because they read it somewhere, or someone told them about it, and they come to us with their belief hardened? As Payne tells us, it's an almost impossible task to undo what has been done. To be clear, no one person, political leaning, or socioeconomic class has monopoly on misinformation. Today, we have an example that is compelling, taking place in real time, literally as we sit here today, and perhaps what is the defining misinformation campaign of our times, the link between vaccines and autism. Measles was declared eradicated in the US in 2000 by the CDC and the Americas in 2016 by the Pan American and World Health Organizations, thanks to widespread vaccinations. But just a few years later, the disease is making a resurgence due to a decline in vaccinations, not because of some new untreatable strain or forces beyond our control, or a vaccine so expensive that no one can afford it. No, the resurgence is due to a decline in vaccinations, parents simply choosing not to vaccinate. In Europe, the numbers are even worse, with the continent experiencing nearly 100,000 reported cases. Measles is a terrible disease, with a death rate as high as 30% prior to the vaccine. Even today, it has a case fatality rate of 3 in 1,000. Non-medical exemptions are becoming more common and are clearly causing a spike in measles outbreaks. These exemptions are occurring across the political spectrum in communities all over the United States. In my home state of Texas, the number of non-medical exemptions has been rising dramatically, from just about 2,000 in 2002 to over 64,000 in 2019. What hasn't been going down, commensurate with this 30-fold increase in exemptions, is the rate of autism. How did we get here? The link between MMR and autism stems from an article by Andrew Wakefield in 1998. This study of just 12 children concluded that the vaccine resulted in developmental regression in a group of previously normal children. The cause was taken up by celebrities and others, resulting in a sustained attack against the safety of vaccines. We've watched the CDC and WHO and pediatric and infectious disease experts speak out with truth and science and reason, and yet too many parents listen to celebrities and anecdotes. The scientists promoting the safety and efficacy of these vaccines get demonized. We have watched truth and reason be trumped by hype, no matter how well-intentioned it is. The effects of this paper linger even today, with all over the world, with high rates of belief that vaccines cause autism. 12 years later, The Lancet published a retraction indicating several elements of the paper were incorrect. The retraction, by the way, came in the form of this short paragraph buried in the back of the journal. By then, the damage had largely been done. Now we are experiencing outbreaks all over the country with dangerous, even intentional exposures of our children to diseases with not insignificant consequences, including death. Change is possible, though. After a measles outbreak in Disneyland in 2015, the California legislature passed Senate Bill 227, which banned non-medical exemptions in 2016. This resulted in a record-high vaccination rate of over 95% of kindergartners. Medical misinformation is making its way into our hospitals and clinics like never before. We need to push back. We are the experts, and we can make a difference. When we hear something absurd, we shouldn't be afraid to call it out. We must use our expertise to inform patients and the public. Our voices can change minds. There is no risk-free proposition. We do have data on harm from vaccines. The National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program pays out adjudicated claims and collects data from individuals harmed by vaccines. Between 2006 and 2017, 3.4 billion doses of vaccines were distributed in the US. One individual was compensated for every 1 million doses distributed. By comparison, the likelihood of being struck by lightning is 1 in 700,000. This information is rarely, if ever, mentioned in the so-called vaccine debate. Perhaps the most famous example of the harm medical misinformation can cause is the choice Apple co-founder Steve Jobs made regarding his own cancer diagnosis. Jobs was diagnosed with a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor at age 48. He was advised to undergo potentially curative surgery, but for 9 months, he sought out alternative treatments, including vegan diets, acupuncture, cleansings, and even consulted a psychic. He eventually had the surgery, but according to many experts, this delay almost certainly cost him his life. This isn't job CT showing an 8-centimeter pancreatic tumor. This is a pancreatic tumor that was diagnosed in my wife, Lorelei. In 2010, after years of intermittent abdominal pain attributed to reflux while suffering with severe pain from what we now know was acute pancreatitis, she went on her own to a local ER and insisted on getting this, her first CT. It was a shock. She was too healthy to be that sick. We discovered her tumor just a few days after I took this picture. Our boys were barely a year old. We were fortunate to be at the best cancer center in the world, and after a distal pancreatectomy and splenectomy, she's made a remarkable recovery. We were fortunate to get the right information and make the right choice for the treatment of this tumor. I would not be standing here, not as president of the CNS, not as a neurosurgeon, but as the person I am today had it not been for the love and support of my wife. Her journey reminds me that medical science has made a remarkable difference in the lives of countless human beings. What would have happened to someone with a pancreatic tumor 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, without the advances we now take for granted? We are celebrating cures of stage 4 cancers, even in patients with brain metastases, thanks to the diligence and hard work of unsung heroes in laboratories and patients willing to enroll in clinical trials. We wait to hear the results of prospective randomized controlled trials because they provide us the best evidence that a treatment is going to work. And the payoff is that our patients will survive to live another day, spend time with their families, and enjoy life. We are in a unique position to advocate for our patients by advancing truth, confronting misinformation, and recommending the best treatments, but also by avoiding those that don't work or haven't demonstrated efficacy in a rigorous way. We should not be afraid to advise a patient that an alternative treatment may expose them to real harm. Choosing alternative medicine over standard of care therapies can lead to a significant decrease in survival for patients with cancer. Now I ask, what can we do, each of us? I want you to leave here ready to help our patients by doing something, and each of us will choose our own way. Doing something can take many forms. It is an uphill battle for sure. You will be facing the so-called Dunning-Kruger effect, in which overconfidence and a knowledge deficit go hand in hand. I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Peter Hotez, Dean for the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine and a champion of vaccinations. He told me we need a curriculum that specifically teaches health and science verbal communication in our medical schools. We need to teach the tools to defend science and expertise. We need to speak in declarative sentences and avoid talking down to our patients. He titled his book, "Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism," in order to simplify the message. I encourage you to read this book, but don't look at the book reviews. They've been corrupted by the anti-vaxxer movement. To conclude, I want to encourage you to counter misinformation and dangerous recommendations in the following ways. We must all stay abreast of the latest and best studies in our field. Familiarize yourself with ways to differentiate good studies from bad. When patients ask you about a treatment you know to be ineffective or dangerous, it's your opportunity to help that patient. Check your arrogance, though. Our patients deserve honesty as well as humility and respect. Participate in honest and open morbidity and mortality conferences. Review practice-changing peer-reviewed literature with colleagues. If misinformation is being spread, say something. We have to be actively engaged. We are the experts. Be critical, be skeptical, but remain open to changing your mind if the evidence convinces you to do so. This is what I'm asking, that we're even more forceful in being the guardians of medical truth, with our patients and with our communities. To quote Payne one last time, "The mind once enlightened cannot again become dark." Thank you.